Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is November the 10th, 3:33 Rio de Janeiro time. I'm glad to be here with you. And yes, we are back live on Sunday. Let's take a look. Let's see if we have any messages over here. No messages that I can see so far. So let's get started with some news in terms of immigration and real estate. As you probably know, you still don't need a visa if you are from the United States, Canada, Australia, and many other countries, right? It's not just those three countries. We usually address those three countries because the Brazilian federal government, the current administration, has been trying really hard to enforce a visa for those three nationalities, right? Under the so-called reciprocity approach, meaning that if they ask Brazilians for a visa, the Brazilian federal government will also ask for a visa. But so far, the President Lula administration, they tried for 3 times to enforce such requirement, but they were not able to get it in place. Pretty much because of the Brazilian Congress. The Brazilian Congress has been resistant to this change, and the underlying reason is because it's working pretty well in terms of attracting more citizens from those three nationalities, and therefore they don't want to cause any trouble to such a nice arrangement. That's the Brazilian Congress take on it. I see Donna. Good day, Luciano. Good to see you over here, Donna. Very good to see you over here. We have a Thomas Fleming. Hi, how's it going, Thomas? Thomas says, hey, Oliveira, is it correct that you become a tax resident the instant you receive a residency in Brazil rather than after 183 days? Yes, Thomas, that's true. Taxation is always a complex subject. It does not matter if you are in Brazil, if you are in the United States, if you are in the UK. So there are multiple triggers, right? The way I try to explain this concept is like there are multiple triggers, and you need to check which trigger is going to apply to you, right? And it's pretty difficult just by research to pinpoint the triggers because there are multiple rules applicable to different types of situation. And so what we provide over here, Thomas, is more like an overview of the different triggers and for sure not a decisive explanation for your circumstances, right? Just keep that in mind so you do not incur in a serious mistake that we see, like foreign citizens incurring pretty much every week. Like we have a consultation with someone who has been, for a while in the country, and they married and they applied for the permanent residency, or they overstayed and they calculated the days wrong. Like, so there are so many ways for someone to become a tax resident that is impossible for us. Another example, right? Like from another perspective, we have a couple of applicants for the digital nomad visa, and she asked me like this question. Okay, her question was like this: so as long as I don't overstay 183 days in the country, it's guaranteed I'm not going to become a tax resident. Then I said, no, it is not. It is not possible for me to answer that because there are multiple triggers, right? So I can tell you that as long as you don't overstay 183 days in a given 12 months period of time, not calendar year, you're not going to trigger the specific trigger of the 183 days, right? Now, there is a bunch of ways you can still be caught under the tax residency, all right? And one of these additional triggers is exactly what you're saying. So if you receive permanent residency in Brazil, then yes, you become a tax resident, right? So there is the time one, the timeline, the 183 days, and then there is another one which is the permanent residency. Now, the permanent residency is not any residency, just like the name says, it is something on a more permanent basis. And nowadays, just different terminology, like, immigration administrations, they come and go. The current one, instead of saying permanent residency, they like to say undetermined, okay, meaning there is no specific period of time that they are giving to you. Instead, they are just giving you like a blank residency, and that's the one, in our understanding, that for taxation purposes is going to trigger tax residency on the spot. And just to show you again how complex this matter is, like, if you secure the permanent tax residency, it's not actually good for the day in which you are securing the residency. It actually goes back, or better saying, is retroactive to the day when you enter the country. Okay, so let's say you enter January the 1st, and then, 5 months down the road, you secure a permanent residency through marriage, okay? So you don't need to wait for the 183 days to become a tax resident. You actually become a tax resident back in time on January the 1st, right? So it goes even further than on the day of securing the tax residency or the permanent residency. It retroactives to the day that you enter the country. All right, Thomas. So I hope that was helpful. Annie Javier. Hi, Dr. Luciano. How you doing? I'm doing well, Annie. Good to see you over here. Let us know about your journey in Brazil, Annie. How is it going? Like, are you in Brazil already? Are you still in the planning stages? Let us know how is your journey going. We also have the 552. Hello, Mr. Oliveira. Hopefully you're feeling a lot better now. I really appreciate the 552. Yes, I'm doing so much better. Just taking care of my diet, trying to exercise, like aerobic exercises. And I'm feeling so much better. And I'm very happy to be here with you guys on a Sunday. WS Bill. Okay, Bill. Good to see you. Oi, Luciano. Headed to get my café. Do you know if I can get Brazilian coffee in the U.S.? Bill, that's an interesting question, right? Like, I mean, in Brazil, we have two main types of coffee. We have like what we call a cafezinho. Okay, so let's say if you visit someone's home, or if you go, to most places, they are going to have like a drip coffee. Okay, so our standard coffee is going to be drip coffee, but it's going to be much stronger than the drip coffee from the United States. Drip coffee from the United States, or standard coffee, is very weak from a Brazilian's perspective, right? So whenever we go like to Starbucks and we see people drinking like, a big cup of coffee, it's very weird, because in Brazil it's usually gonna be like a it's not like a mug, it's like a small a tiny mug, or we call it xícara, not sure about the ideal translation, and it comes on a sauce, and it is usually very strong, even if it is drip coffee. Now, from 10, 20 years ago to now, we've been, upgrading our coffee, or we're changing the habit. So instead of drip coffee, we are more into espresso. Okay, so nowadays, if you go to any kind of fancier restaurant, or if you go to a law firm, like if you come to our law firm, I don't think it is fancy, but we still have the espresso, right? Yeah, Marcella is sharing here, like espresso, exactly. So nowadays, instead of drip coffee, we are having like pressure-based coffee, which I believe it was originated in Turkey. So in the United States, like if you go to a supermarket and you're gonna get ground coffee, and you see one of those machines in the United States, you're gonna see different types of grounding, and there's gonna be like the more extreme, the more extreme choice you can have is the Turkish one, which is gonna produce a very powdery version of the grounded coffee, and this one it's gonna be super strong. And that's exactly the point. Like for us Brazilians, particularly if you're gonna have coffee after a meal, we want to have something very strong that's gonna help wake us up. Particularly if you are, if you're not in your 20s or 30s anymore. The Turkish coffee, which we call espresso, and I think in the United States is espresso as well. That's what we're gonna have nowadays. But again, like 20 years ago, the espresso machines, like in Brazil, they were very expensive, and they were not that common. But nowadays, I believe, again, particularly if you go to a restaurant or if you go to, not just a law firm, but pretty much any type of business, they are going to be serving the espresso. Of course, there are, like the Keurig, there is the Nespresso. So nowadays, just like I said, like 20 years ago, an espresso machine like in Brazil, they were usually imported from Italy. So it was kind of rare, like for, a padaria, the type of place we go for bread and for a lunch or a snack. So it was very rare for someone to find espressos, but nowadays they are taking over. So we are changing our habit. Instead of drip coffee, now we have like the espresso coffee. But yes, if you are in the United States, just go for a small espresso, and there you go. That's what you're probably gonna see in Brazil. Of course, like we are pickier in terms of the flavor. Even though now we have Starbucks in Brazil, Trufal Brazil, like probably in every major capital in Brazil, you're gonna find a Starbucks store. But it's still weird, right? Like, I mean, to me, like, I mean, sometimes, when I am in the States, I do go to a Starbucks, but I never have one of those big, cups of coffee, and I'm just gonna ask like for either espresso or drip coffee. I don't like other stuff in my coffee. I need to taste coffee, not something else. All right, so that's more like the Brazilian style. Interesting coffee question, Bill. That was a good one. Hi, Marcela. E aí, galera? Hi, everyone. Good to see you, Marcela. WS Bill welcomes Marcela. Adabi Tony, happy Sunday, sir. Happy Sunday, Adabi. Good to see you over here. All right, so Oni is sharing about his odyssey in Brazil. I was there twice for 6 months combined. We'll be coming back soon for the New Year and Carnival. Well, that's a great choice. New Year in Rio de Janeiro, right? It's very interesting, right? Like it's very interesting. There are private venues, but the traditional one, it's gonna be in Copacabana, which is not the fanciest neighborhoods, as you probably know. The fanciest neighborhoods in Rio de Janeiro, in my opinion, are gonna be Leblon and Ipanema. Copacabana is more like an everyday's person type of beach. There is like the subway. There are bus lines, arriving in Copacabana. So in Copacabana, you have a really nice blend of people from all walks of life. That's what makes Copacabana so interesting to me, right? I am a Copacabana guy. I'm not a Leblon or Ipanema guy. I am the kind of Copacabana guy. And I do love spend New Year's Eve in Copacabana. Traditionally, every single year, you don't need to plan ahead. I mean, of course, you need to plan ahead, to secure, first to secure a place to stay because the city gets pretty busy. So you are unable, of course, to just arrive like a week or a couple of weeks prior to New Year's Eve and find a place. So you do need to plan. But what I'm saying is like every single year, you're going to have amazing fireworks, all right? So in terms of when you're going to have amazing fireworks, you don't need to plan. It's going to be every single year. A very interesting experience, Oni, if you happen to be planning to visit Rio de Janeiro. And you know, also no need to tell you that Rio de Janeiro is the land of the carnival. So again, like 20, 30 years ago, carnival was just Rio de Janeiro. There was nothing else other than Rio de Janeiro. Of course, you know, even when I was a child, going to the São Paulo soccer club's carnival, you know, like we would have the carnival parties, but you wouldn't have the big parades that you have in Rio de Janeiro. But nowadays, it has changed. So São Paulo, particularly because of the economic power of São Paulo, we also have really big parades. Almost just like Rio de Janeiro. And for the northeast of the country, very interesting. You don't have like those big parades. You have a kind of different style. So it's more like, you know, people having fun. They still, you know, dress up with some type of costume. But again, not the same style as you would see in Rio de Janeiro. But São Paulo, you know, like such change, you know, for the last 30 years, again, like 30 years ago, no parades at all. I mean, there was zero parade. There was no organization. There was no like escola de samba or samba schools. It was just Rio de Janeiro. And nowadays, you know, like the São Paulo parade is getting closer and closer and closer to Rio de Janeiro. In terms of glamour, in terms of visuals, in terms of investments, and even in terms of you know, tradition. Now, you know, São Paulo has a tradition. I probably told you guys before, I was born in the neighborhood of Bexiga, which is a super traditional neighborhood in the São Paulo downtown area. You know, like an old Italian a neighborhood. Nowadays, you don't find Italians anymore, but it's still recognized as an Italian neighborhood. So you do find really nice Italian restaurants in the area. And in this area, there is the Escola de Samba or Samba School, known as Vai Vai, which roughly translates as Go Go. And you know, this school has won several of the, you know, contests for carnival in São Paulo. All right. So now, you know, if you are in Bexiga, if you're visiting the São Paulo downtown area, you know, some tourist guides, they are even gonna take you to Vai Vai, to the Samba school, which is based in this neighborhood in which I was born. All right. So there you go. That's an interesting take on Carnival, Oni, in case you are deciding where you're gonna spend your New Year and Carnival. All right. Oni says I'm Turkish between. All right, Oni. So I'm sure that whenever you're visiting Brazil, coffee is not going to represent a big change in terms of taste for you. Bill says, love super strong espresso. The same thing with me, Bill. And allow me the joke. I think, you know, like the older we grow, the more we like strong espressos, right? Like particularly after a meal, or, you know, when, you know, it's already like, you know, afternoon, so you have an espresso and you kind of, you know, get your energy back and it's tasteful as well. Like, I mean, I love an espresso. There you go, Dale. Marcella, Greek is stick to, a spoon stand up and then. Oh, yeah, Marcella. Interesting. I didn't know about the Greek coffee. I'm more familiar with the Turkish. And I did buy Turkish coffee, by the way. Like I've been to Turkey just once, and it was in Istanbul, which has an amazing airport, probably the most amazing airport I saw anywhere, right? And I did buy some Turkish coffee, but I don't know. Like I brought the Turkish coffee back home, and I don't know. There was something to the taste. that it wasn't exactly like the Brazilian coffee. It was different from the American coffee, and I don't know why, but we ended up not using the Turkish coffee. All right, just some sharing. Only saying Greek and Turkish is the same. There you go. Adabi Tony, may God be with you, Mr. Oliveira. I really appreciate Adabi. Thank you so much for your words. Bill says, yes, many years ago, I had a Turkish coffee in Miami. There you go, Bill. Thomas is replying, thanks for your answer. Follow-up question, is it possible to get the Viper visa without triggering tax residency or otherwise opt out the tax residency if staying less than 163 days? Thomas, very common question, right? People want to buy property, they want to take advantage of buying this property to secure residency in Brazil, but tax residency not desirable, right? So yes, when you apply for the Viper visa based on property acquisition, you're gonna get 4 years initially. Okay, that's what you should get. Now, just sharing, because sometimes people see different things and then they say, well, he said it was 4. I heard about someone else getting 2 or unlimited. And prior to the current regulation in place, like the original one said, you would get just 2 years. Okay, but the current version, there was a regulation updating the original regulation, and the current one says 4 years. Okay, but we still see for some reason people getting 2 years as an exception, and they may also get you straight away the permanent one, but that's a big exception. I think we saw this happening only once in the past. I would say 90% of the time you're going to get 4 years, maybe 7% they are going to give you 2 years, and 3% of the time you're going to get, straight away you're going to get the permanent residency. All right. So let's say the standard is for you to get 4 years. 4 years is not permanent, of course, it's just temporary, and therefore is not going to trigger the tax residency after the 4 years. At least as of today, we don't know 4 years from now, but at least as of today, you have an option to renew for an additional 4 years. Okay, so in theory, you could just keep renewing on a 4-year basis and never trigger the permanent residency. But I don't like to actually even disclose this option, because what if next time you apply, there is no option for you to renew on the 4-year basis, right? So, but as of today, yes, you could, in theory, avoid the tax residency by avoiding the permanent residency. All right, Thomas. Bill says, Marcela, I love when I can pull the spoon out and lick the coffee. All right, Lo. Yes, Bill, there you go. I can see you are a true lover of coffee. Marcela says, Marcela is sharing Copacabana is best during New Year's Eve. In my opinion, they will have a stage set up with bands, DJs, millions and millions of people. It's insane. That's true, Marcela. I remember when I was in my 20s, right? It was my first Réveillon, right? Like my first New Year's Eve in Copacabana. And I wasn't staying in Copacabana. I was staying in another neighborhood. I don't recall how far it was, but let's say during daytime or regular hours, you would be like a 30-minute drive from Copacabana. And I was staying with a friend of mine, right? Like I was staying with a friend of mine in her apartment. And then I remember we went to Copacabana. It was like afternoon. It took us like a couple of hours to get there. It was early afternoon, the day before, on the day of, a New Year's Eve, right? And then after the show, after, the fireworks and everything, I think we started our return back home. I think it was like 3 a.m. in the morning. And I remember, I think we got home like 7 a.m. in the morning. So it was a 4-hour return, from Copacabana back to her place, right? So it's crazy because if you think about it, there is, I don't know, maybe a period of 12 hours or 16 hours in which pretty much everybody's going to Copacabana. And then just like Marcela said, you're going to have like millions and millions of people. I'm not saying hundreds of thousands. I'm saying millions and millions of people in this neighborhood, like crowded neighborhood. And then when the party's over, guess what? People will leave at the same time. So all of those million people trying to leave the area is going to take a long while. So I remember that was very, it was very telling of, how famous and how desirable, the Copacabana New Year's Eve is. Now, of course, I used to go when I was in my 20s. I don't know, right? I haven't been to a Copacabana New Year's Eve like recently. Last time I went, I was in a Copacabana apartment, so I didn't need to spend 4 hours to reach somewhere else. But nice sharing, Marcelo. Yes, the millions and millions. That's something that you are unable to even imagine unless you are there, right? And when you are there, then you can see, how huge New Year's Eve in Copacabana is. Really nice sharing, Marcela. Oni, thanks for the input. Experienced Sampa and Rio during Carnival. Wanted to go to Nordeste this time for the Carnival. Yes. So Oni has experienced both Sampa. Sampa is like the nickname for São Paulo. And Rio for the Mara. Yes, really nice carnivals. And Northeast is a completely different ball game, very interesting, like one that was a big choice for me early in the days. It was a carnival in the state of Bahia, more specifically the city of Porto Seguro, right? So in Bahia you have capital is Salvador, and then you have the city of Porto Seguro, which was, if I'm not mistaken, the first city, the first city that Europeans ever reached. It was like the Portuguese, Pedro Álvares Cabral, the so-called discovery of Brazil. It happened in the state of Bahia, the city of Porto Seguro, okay? And nowadays, of course, Porto Seguro has a lot of historic, sightings, historic places. But Porto Seguro is nowadays 100% recognized as a party city, okay? So it does not matter when you go to Porto Seguro, there's going to be party going on 24/7. It's unbelievable, right? And, just to give you a little bit more info on how much party you have in that place, I remember when I was in my 20s again, and I used to go to Porto Seguro, the partying, it was so intense. There was a time I said, I'm going to go and spend a week in Porto Seguro. And I probably spent, I think, 3 days. And I said to myself, listen, I need to leave this place. Otherwise, I'm going to die, because I wasn't sleeping. I was partying 24 hours a day. And 3 days down the road, I was starting to say, listen, if I don't go elsewhere, I'm not going to have some resting. I'm going to die. And I left Porto Seguro. But trust me, I had 3 days of absolute bliss. It was, and just for you to think about it, if you're not going to sleep by choice, it means you have something else even better to do, which kind of, how highlights how big or, how nice Porto Seguro is. Really, really, really special from my perspective. I haven't been to Porto Seguro for a couple of decades, and the last few times I went there, it was under a different type of arrangement, more like a business-oriented arrangement, but you can tell, it's a party city, okay, right? So that's another interesting choice, Annie, Porto Seguro, There are other choices, but I don't know, like Porto Seguro just came to my mind, and that's why I'm sharing. Elizabeth King, welcome to the gang, Elizabeth. Elizabeth is asking, is there a possibility you can tell me what all documents before I leave the U.S., what needs to be apostilled for the marriage visa? Elizabeth, I cannot tell you specifically, and I can explain why. It was during the last live stream I was explaining to you guys, not you. I know you were not in that particular live stream. Like we are trying to avoid answering specific legal questions because the Brazilian Bar Association actually forbids us from providing, like advisory for free. Okay, it's against the the ethics committee in Brazil. So we are free to discuss general stuff like we're doing right now. But if I tell you exactly the documents that you need, guess what? I'm providing with legal advisory for free, and that's forbidden. That's a reason even for you to be eventually penalized by the Brazilian Bar Association. But I can tell you something that can be helpful for you. If you go, Elizabeth, if you go to our website right now, oliveiralawyers.com, we have a sample. We have a sample checklist. We have a sample checklist for the marriage-based residency, right? So you can go over there, do your research. You can use our checklist. It's just a reference. It's just a sample. It's not an answer for your specifics. But I think that would be very helpful for you. All right, Elizabeth, I hope that helps. The 552, which city do you prefer, Rio de Janeiro or São Paulo? The 552, that's a great question. So I think nowadays I do prefer Rio de Janeiro, okay, just because, from a landscape, from a visual, from a kind of vibe perspective, Rio de Janeiro, it's unbeatable. It's unbeatable, okay? And São Paulo is still a great choice. I spent probably the best years of my life in São Paulo, all right? So no complaints about São Paulo. I think it's just a matter of where you are in your journey. The moment in my journey now is like to try to slow down a bit, to be able to work looking at beautiful scenery and being closer to the nature and, maybe just having a better chance of, building friendships. So I think Rio de Janeiro, from that moment, from that perspective, is a better choice for me now. But again, São Paulo is the right answer to so many people. We had an interview not too long ago with Gerard Nadini. Like if you go to our YouTube channel, you're gonna search for Gerard Nadini, and we did record. It was a good 40 minutes of conversation, and Gerard, he's absolutely in love. He has been in love for a long time with São Paulo, right? He says, he goes to Rio de Janeiro every now and then, but maybe it's for the weekend. Like he would never, live in Rio de Janeiro, given how much he likes São Paulo. All right, so just sharing, and Gerard is a retiree from the United States. If I'm not mistaken, he's from California, and he does love São Paulo. He's actually an expert in São Paulo. If you ask about restaurants and experiences, I think Gerard, believe it or not, he would know more about São Paulo than myself, right? But that's because, of course, he has been very active in São Paulo and enjoying himself, making friends, going to leisure activities and dining out a lot. So Gerard is the expert in São Paulo. All right? Okay. There you go. Bill is asking the dates for the 2025 Carnival. I don't know, Bill. I don't know. And we as Brazilians, we always leave, this for the last minute. The dates for the Carnival, they change dramatically from year to year. Like, so some years it's going to be like in February. In other years, it's going to be like in March. But Bill, let me ask you a favor. If you could just search around and let us know when the dates are going to be. Now I'm curious about what the dates are going to be in 2025. Now, talking about dates, we have something that's really interesting going on in Rio de Janeiro. In Rio de Janeiro, we're gonna have the G20, right? There's gonna be a G20 meeting in Rio de Janeiro next week, right? So we're talking about dates. I'm telling you, we're gonna have the G20, the meeting like of the 20 nations that participate in meetings and plannings, under the G20. So the G20 is the G20 meetings, they are gonna occur next week. And guess what? The mayor of the city of Rio de Janeiro, he declared like a city holiday, a city official legal holiday for the days of 18th and 19th. Okay. And that's fine, right? Like, I mean, 2 days of holidays is not going to kill anyone. However, we have a problem. We have a problem because November the 20th is a holiday, and November the 15th is another holiday. And now we have, like this almost like a week, a break, and we need to serve our clients, right? Our office in Rio de Janeiro takes care of all our immigration cases. And now we are scrambling, like to try to have at least part of our team operational during those dates. And something else for you guys to know, like labor regulation in Brazil is super strict, and it's kind of outdated. It's from the 30s. From 1930s, that's when the current labor framework was created, and Brazil has been attached to this labor framework forever. The prior administration was trying to modernize, and it did modernize many things in our labor framework. But guess what? Now we have the Labor Party in charge, and they are, unfortunately, from my perspective, undoing many of the good things that the prior administration did on the labor framework, right? Like, I'm not saying that I like one administration better than the other. I'm saying that for the labor framework, I think there is a real need of updating and making the country more competitive from the labor perspective. But going back to the dates that I was mentioning, so next week we're going to have this coming week, and the next one we're going to have this kind of pickle here at the firm because labor regulation in Brazil is really tough. So if the holiday is official, it means like people don't need to come to work. Okay, that's the reality, right? Like, people don't need to come to work, and for you guys to have an idea, like to have people coming to work, we need to pay double their rate. Which I think is still fine, right? Like, I mean, if we need to serve clients, we need to do what's needed. But even if we pay the employee twice their, hourly rate, guess what? They're still not required to show up. So at the end of the day, it's almost like we are, begging, some of our team members to show up and keep the lights on. But we are very lucky to have Patrick. Patrick is our manager over there. He said, listen, worst case scenario is going to be me by myself running the office. And at the end of the day, like, you guys as foreign citizens, you should take Brazil as it is. And it's not just like the upsides, but the downsides as well. So in Brazil, we do have, things that are not as functional or as streamlined as it is in the United States and other countries. And the labor regulation is one of those facts. So if we don't have anyone to work during those days, guess what? We need to do some, planning ahead of time. That's what we're going to be doing this week, trying to advance or, to work on the cases as much as we can. And then from the 15th to the 20th, guess what? There's going to be an autoresponder saying, listen, we are in an official break, from the city of Rio de Janeiro. And therefore, you're going to hear from us on the 21st now. Okay, but that was just interesting. There was something new. I don't recall this happening before, but it is what it is. So, holidays in Rio de Janeiro, in addition to a couple of them, the mayor of Rio de Janeiro just created out of thin air an additional couple of holidays, right? There you go. That's how things work in Brazil. All right. Okay, Fortaleza versus Rio beachfront property. Are the prices much different? Absolutely, absolutely. First thing, welcome, Planeta. Good to see you over here. And Planeta, yes, the prices are extremely different. Okay, like in Fortaleza, beachfront property, you can probably start buying at the 700,000 reais range. In Rio de Janeiro, it usually starts like at 1.2, 1.3, 1.5 million reais. For less desirable beats, and it goes all the way to 16 million reais. Okay, that's the largest transaction we ever had here at the firm, and it's actually a current ongoing transaction here at the firm. We have a client from the United Arab Emirates, and he's buying a property for 16 million reais. And a very interesting story is that we were able to secure a 1 million reais. So the price he was supposed to pay, it was actually 17th, and we were able to get an additional discount of 1 million reais, right? And in Fortaleza, for 2 million reais, you're probably gonna buy, or for 2 or 3 million reais, you're gonna buy potentially the best penthouse you can ever find in Fortaleza for 2 to 3 million reais. But I never saw in Fortaleza anything selling for more than 5 million reais. And in Rio de Janeiro, right, particularly for Ipanema, there are a couple of avenues, right? Like, of course, the beachfront, there is the Delfim Neto. There is another one. So a couple of avenues like in the Ipanema beach area. Super common for properties to be sold over 5 million reais, over $1 million. Super common, okay? But not at all in Fortaleza. So the prices are substantially different, Planeta. And that's why we even recorded a few videos trying to draw this distinction. If you are a Rio de Janeiro person, by all means, stay in Rio de Janeiro. But if you don't have any attachments to Rio de Janeiro, but you still wanna, have a beachfront property, Fortaleza, it's a huge thing for you. Okay, and that's the point. Like, if you like Rio, Fortaleza is not gonna cut. It's not gonna cut it. You gotta be Rio de Janeiro, right? Like, particularly the vibe, the views, the nature. I think, from those points of view, Rio de Janeiro is better than Fortaleza. Fortaleza, on the other hand, it's not a huge city like Rio de Janeiro, so it does have a different type of, experience in which you're not kind of overwhelmed by the city. So it's easier, to leave Fortaleza to go to one of the close by towns. Prices in general, cost of living in Fortaleza is substantially lower than prices in Rio de Janeiro. You also have a lot of access to leisure and sports in Fortaleza, so maybe that would be a draw when you compare Fortaleza to Rio de Janeiro. But I think it's more a matter of style, right? Like Fortaleza, the whole northeast of Brazil is a more, in development type of area, and Rio is already, what it is. It shouldn't change much over time, but Fortaleza and the Northeast, for the matter, it's in a state of development and evolution. So also, right, like, I mean, from an investment perspective, I think Fortaleza has some pretty interesting upsides, particularly for the main areas. Now, Rio de Janeiro, on the other side, it has such, as such, like, base of fans out there that, whenever you buy a property, even if it is like a crazy expensive property, like I was sharing with you guys, there's still gonna be buyers out there just because Rio is Rio, right? Like, I mean, if you have an apartment in Fortaleza, I guarantee 9 people out of 10 they're not gonna have any clue about where Fortaleza is. And Rio de Janeiro, like, you don't need introductions to Rio de Janeiro, right? Like, Rio de Janeiro, in my mindset, is kind of, like when you have those famous brands. They say, well, we have a store in New York, we have a store in London, we have a store in Milan, and we have a store in Rio de Janeiro, right? So Rio de Janeiro is on pair with those, iconic world cities. And that's something that no other city, I think, in Brazil will ever come close to, all right? Even São Paulo, I mean, everybody knows São Paulo because, again, it's probably the financial and economic heart of Brazil. But when it comes, to this kind of, scenery, or, like the Brazil that people think about when they are abroad, they are actually thinking about Rio de Janeiro, okay? So that's it, Planeta. I hope that was helpful. We have Donna, what is the name of the office to do due diligence regarding the history of property in Brazil? So, Donna, like when you, there are different stages of due diligence when you are interested in buying property in Brazil. Usually the first step is going to be getting a certificate of the property, and the certificate of the property is going to be available in a registry called Registro de Imóveis, right? I'm going to write over here, Registro de Imóveis. This would be somewhat similar to the records, let's say county records in the United States, all right? So the United States, if you want to take a look at the records for a property, you're going to go to a website, I don't know, whatever county you live in, New York City County, right? You go over there, there is a database of records, of real estate records. So actually it would be county real estate records, okay? And then you do a search, you eventually find the records, and then you have these records reviewed by an attorney to see who's the owner of record, to see if there are liens and other stuff. So that's the first step, okay? That's the first step. Usually we have like an initial due diligence, which is pretty much get the, like the records for the property, make sure that you're dealing with the current owner, right, of the property. We also run some search on the seller. We get a credit report on the seller to make sure that the seller is financially viable, that they are not like upside down. Because if a seller sells a property, at a time in which the seller has many, creditors, unpaid creditors out there, you run the risk of buying the property and have 30 parties coming after the property, even after the closing, and a new issuance of the title on your name. So therefore, after we do the initial checkings, after we have a purchase agreement in place, we're going to do a more extended due diligence, which has zero to do with the records from the registry. It's going to be more like our research. We do like, research on the seller, like from a criminal and civil perspective. We're going to do additional search on the property to see if there are debts out there attached to the property and so on. But the initial one is done at the Registro de Imóveis, Donna. All right, I hope that was helpful. The 552 says, thanks for sharing. I will check the video out. Yes, 552, that's gonna help you. WSB Rio Carnival Festival, February 28th to March 8th, 2025. Thank you for sharing, Bill. So there you go. That's for Annie and other people who may want to enjoy the next year's carnival. Like if someone is arriving like prior to New Year's Eve, potentially you could be able to enjoy both New Year's Eve and Carnival as well in Rio de Janeiro, right? Remembering that you usually get 90 days to stay in Brazil. All right, Planeta, is it difficult to find property management companies in Fortaleza that will take care of potential Airbnb? It is, Planeta. It is difficult to find, all right? Like I wish I could, bring you good news, but it is a pain in the neck to get property management companies in Brazil, right? Even in São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, we need to deal with less than ideal property management companies. It is probably because of demand and all the friction that you have, like in Brazil. You have bureaucracy, you have red tape, you have labor issues. So there are so many things that are going to contribute to this kind of friction that you have when you are managing a property, and therefore you're going to find the same issue when you're trying to hire a property management company. We do provide property management services, but to few clients. All right, like one thing I can tell you, and I'm being very, very transparent. Like, in my experience, like for instance, they want to have a top-notch service, but they are not always willing to pay the fee, right? So if I tell you, listen, I'm gonna be charging you $250 per month just to help you manage, but I'm still hiring someone, you're gonna say, what? I wanna pay $250 in total, right? And you're not gonna find anyone to help you, for that matter, right? Like even if they speak zero English, even if they are not an attorney, and there is sometimes a huge gap between like the expectation of people buying properties in Brazil and the reality of the Brazilian markets, right? So that's why we usually do like the property management, like we handle a bunch of things, like we pay the taxes, we pay like the HOA fees, we actually have like a third-party property manager specifically just for the Airbnb and Booking.com, and we just kind of put those things together and make sure nobody's taking advantage of our client. But there is a price tag. And most clients, even when they are buying like expensive properties, they think that the cost is just too much. So in this case, like they need to find either another service provider, sometimes the real estate agent themselves, they are going to provide this service, and that's what we see happening at the firm. So for every 10 properties we have here at the firm, only one or two will hire our services to help them manage the property. Right? Most of them, they are going to find some plan B type of thing, and they are going to make it work, or some of them, they are say, what, like it's too much trouble, I'm just going to keep the property for myself, I'm not going to rent this out, and it makes it easier because then they just need to pay like the taxes and the HOA fees, and that's what we see like in reality. All right, Thomas, any chance you could make some videos on Brazilian property covering locations, price, cost of living, safety, price growth, voltage, etc. would be very helpful. Yes, Thomas, like we have this in our planning. We are actually, as we speak, we are setting up like a secondary entity just to work on the let's say more property side of things. Like, you know, at the end of the day, we're still a law firm, right? Like, so a law firm doing this type of videos is not really an ideal match. So because of that, we have now like a sister company that's going to be a fully fledged real estate agency that's going to be working with us. So for instance, something we don't do as we speak is like to provide short lists of properties. As of today, we say, listen, go find the property, come to us. We're going to help you with the acquisition. But starting like in 2025, and we actually have a few clients working as a pilot with the secondary entity that we're forming. The secondary entity is going to be like, you know, a real estate agency, right, with the licenses and everything. So the good thing about the real estate agency is that you don't need to pay because they're going to be paid by the seller. But they are going to focus on these things that you're talking about, Thomas, like, you know, recording videos, explaining locations, you know, prices, cost of living, safety. That's a really nice checklist, Thomas, for me to share with our, you know, partner who's going to be in charge of this entity. All right, the entity is going to be called Camila Sonier. Camila Sonier is our partner, and the real estate agency has her name, and there is a website that we are working on, and something nice like I haven't seen so far anyone doing that. Like, we are connecting this website to some of the major databases of properties in Brazil. So everything is going to be in English, but you're still going to be able to see the properties. And it's not just properties that they are registering in the database, but they're accessing actually existing databases out there, right? And they're still doing some level of filtering. But at the end of the day, it's going to be like you have a database to start with, and if you don't find something that matches your interests, you can still tell them what you're looking for, and they are going to work. They are going to work on a short list for you to work on. And if you're using their services, then you get a discount to work with us, and vice versa, right? And then with combining those two things, we kind of make the service more comprehensive, meaning it would be like a one-stop type of thing, and you would have both like the realtors and us lawyers working, to the same goal without duplicating efforts, and also maximizing the fee or minimizing the fee that you can pay to get all of those services from us. All right, but that was nice sharing, Thomas. All right, I'm going to take here our last question. I want to appreciate you guys for showing up today. If you haven't liked our live stream so far, I will ask you to please go ahead and like it. It's good for our business, and it's good for other people just like you who want to be finding such content. And if you like it, you make it easier for people to find this content. Don't forget, we have our live stream for Wednesday. We have our live stream for Wednesday already set up. So if you just go to the live section of our YouTube channel, you can see the schedule for Wednesday. You just click on Notify Me. And once you click it, you're going to be alerted when we are starting our live stream on Wednesday. All right, so let's take the next one. It comes from Planeta. If you had 2 million reais, would you invest in 2 small studios or a bigger unit in Fortaleza? Like Fortaleza, Planeta, maybe 2 small studios, okay? Just because bigger units in Fortaleza, sometimes they do take more time to rent. But, for Fortaleza or for Ceará, for that matter, I usually invest more in outside of Fortaleza. I invest, like in beachfront towns like the highly sought beachfront towns. There are, 3 of them. I can tell you the names, okay? Jericoacoara. I'm gonna leave Jericoacoara for last, because it's really difficult to get over there. The one I love the most is like Canoa Quebrada. All right, Canoa Quebrada, which is also known. It's under the city of Aracati, right? So Canoa Quebrada is like a village connected to the city of Aracati. And then there is Morro Branco, which is my second option, Morro Branco, which is in the city of Beberibe. And that's where I spend most of my time in Beberibe. And then there is Jericoacoara, right? So I usually invest in those places and not in Fortaleza, because whenever I am investing in like cities, I usually like to invest more in São Paulo, right? Like in São Paulo, maybe it's because I'm from São Paulo, but like I know São Paulo really, really, really well, and I like to invest in São Paulo. Nowadays, I try to invest in like not studios, because the studio, all right, like you can keep studios located almost like non-stop, but you also need to deal with tenants, right? Particularly if you're dealing with short term. And São Paulo, the good thing about São Paulo is that it does not matter how big or high end the property is, you're gonna find the tenants, right? So that's something very specific to São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro for that matter as well. But one problem I have with Rio de Janeiro is like I don't know how to say it. I don't want to sound like I'm bad mouthing Rio de Janeiro, but like I told you guys before, like in Rio de Janeiro, out of the 10 last governors, 5 went to jail for corruption. So in Rio de Janeiro, you have some issues that they bother me, right? Particularly when you buy and selling and investing, and I face so much challenges, representing my clients, that when it comes to my investment, I'm kind of tired of Rio de Janeiro, right? And you guys probably know about that, but most of our real estate transactions in Brazil are in Rio de Janeiro, and we need to fight really hard for our clients. So when it comes to my time, to my investments, I'm just tired of Rio de Janeiro. I usually invest in São Paulo for urban investments, and like those smaller towns when we're talking about beachfront properties and northeast of Brazil. All right, so that's my sharing. I want to say thank you guys again for showing up for today's live. I'm feeling pretty well. Thank you for the kind of words that you shared today. And I hope to see you on Wednesday. And you guys have a blessed rest of your Sunday.